Oh, we're on a roll here tonight.
We are on a roll.
Yeah, I imagine that no one would have jumped at this episode without listening to the other 3 great episodes, so
Yeah.
we don't need to introduce ourselves.
No, but we will. My name's Hunter.
And my name's Reuben.
Yeah.
I care about the environment.
And I care about AI.
Yeah.
And together we are A-Environment.
It doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in with an explanation of a thing.
What's your thing?
My thing is sound. I'm going to talk a little bit about sound.
What?
Sound.
What?
Sound. God, my shut.
What?
Ruben's pretty sober tonight. I'm a little bit drunk. Sound. All right.
What?
So buckle up, kiddos, and use your ears to listen to some sound.
What?
Shut up. All right. So what we got with sounds. People don't really think. You didn't say what that time.
What?
There we are. Yeah. So we talked about heat before, and it turns out that sound is actually just vibration as well. Both heat and sound are vibration. You know,
what we're really talking about is vibration.
Vibration, yeah. So when we're talking about heat, we're talking about random vibration. You got these molecules going in all sorts of different directions. You know, they're all over the place, and they're vibrating very fast, but very small. They don't have a big amplitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you touch it, it burns your hand because it vibrates your hand and breaks apart the molecules in your hand, and they burn and turn into something else. This is where it gets the energy to turn into something else, because by hitting it really hard. That's heat.
How come hot things aren't loud?
Well, because they're vibrating they have a very small amplitude when something's vibrating from heat, and they're all vibrating in different directions.
Right.
So if you listened hard enough, if you had like a super ear, you would be able to hear heat, but it's very quiet. And it's probably like white noise, I imagine. I don't really know. It would just be random noise. But yeah, your eardrum's really big. Your eardrum's pretty thick compared to the size of heat vibrations. So it's likely that at any point, something vibrating in one direction and something vibrating in the opposite direction would kind of cancel out the vibration of your eardrum as a whole, which is kind of why you can't hear heat. Although, check all of this, it's speaking drunk at night time.
And I can't hear.
Yeah. So sound is when they all line up and they move in a much larger amplitude. So you move a whole bunch of particles at the same time, forward and then back, right? So if you look at a loudspeaker moving, you can see it moving, whereas you can't see something that's hot moving because it's moving too small. Too random. But you can see a loudspeaker moving in and out, in and out, in and out. And just that in and out, one flat loudspeaker can make every sound that your voice can make. It can make every sound that a bird can make, or a table falling, or anything.
I've never understood. How does that happen?
The loudspeaker uses an electromagnet to move itself in and out. So the magnet turns on and it pushes it in towards the magnet, and the magnet turns off and it pushes it away from the magnet. So you get something that moves in and out, right? Really quickly.
Yeah.
And the quicker it moves, the higher pitch the sound is.
But how does it do every sound at once? How does it one thing moving play the sound of several instruments or something?
Yeah, right. Well, if you let's do the most basic one to start, and then we'll work up to that question. So let's say you wanted to just hear the sound which is actually a pretty complicated sound, but suppose that was a single, a single note, a single frequency. You would vibrate the thing, whatever the thing is. It could be your voice box, it could be the loudspeaker thing. It vibrates in and out at a frequency. That just means how fast it goes in and out. And an amplitude, which means how far it goes in and out. So it moves the air next to it in the same frequency. So it pushes the air back and forth. And because it's a big flat thing, it pushes all the air particles near it back and forth the same. So you've got air now going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then that hits your ear, and your ear goes back and forth, your eardrum, which runs between a couple of tiny little bones, which hits the second part of your ear, which goes back and forth, and then goes to liquid, and then goes to little hair cells that get blown back and forth by the moving tympanic membrane, or whatever it's called, and then that converts to electrical impulses in your brain. But the sound itself is just the movement of the air, or whatever the sound is encoded in, moving back and forth. So that's how you get one frequency of sound. How do you get multiple frequencies of sound at the same time? The answer is you don't. You only get one frequency of sound at the same time. Everything you hear is just a single frequency at one time. It just changes quickly.
So say you've got, I don't know, bass and drums and guitar. What that actually is the loudspeaker alternating between those sounds really fast.
It's alternating between different frequencies really fast. So if you combine a low frequency sound with a high frequency sound, what you're actually getting is every time the low frequency sound moves forward at the same time as the high frequency sound, you move it a little bit further forward, so that little piece sounds a little bit louder. And every time it's in the opposite direction, they kind of cancel each other out a little bit. And then in between, you get all the amplitudes in between.
And then that's happening in milliseconds, so it sounds like it's at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, what your ear is hearing, your ear itself can only move in and out at one speed at a time. You only have, let's say one eardrum. You've got two eardrums, but let's say you've only got one eardrum, because both eardrums are moving at the same speed, usually.
Yeah.
that eardrum as a whole just moves in and out at whatever frequency is hitting it, however fast the air particles are hitting it.
Right.
So if you're hearing different frequencies, you're not actually hearing different frequencies. Your brain is just clever enough to decode a kind of pattern. So it works out by itself that, just a nanosecond ago I was hearing this thing, and a nanosecond now I'm hearing this thing, and in a nanosecond I'm hearing another thing. And then that combination like combines in your brain to give you the sensation of hearing like different sounds at the same time. But at any given time, you're only hearing a one-dimensional thing. You know, it's like if you look at a wave. This is probably a good way of saying it. Have you ever used like any sound software, any like GarageBand or whatever, and you see a sound wave going up and down, and you might have seen like lots of different sound waves at the same time. But if you compress all those tracks in that software, so you just have a single sound wave playing. That's what the speaker is doing, and so it's that very complicated up down, down, up, that very complicated wave. Is what the speaker is going. It's going in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out.
In a really complex pattern.
In a really complex pattern. And so the sound you hear sounds complex, but it's still only one-dimensional.
That's crazy that that's just in your earphones as well.
Yeah, it's just a little thing in your earphones that's moving in and out, in and out, in and out, and it can do it at any different frequency, and it can change frequencies very quickly, which lets you hear everything.
So how a song is coded, like say you're listening to something on Spotify, that's like what's going through your aux cord is like a series of, I don't know, ones and zeros that are representing electrical impulses. Yeah, it's a series of instructions that say move the earphone drum in, move the earphone drum out. Yeah. In, out, in, out, in, out. And at different speeds, it combines to make music. Which is really sort of crazy to think about. No one really thinks about sound. Yeah. Because it's actually fairly simple. It's just the air or whatever the sound is traveling through, moving back and forth. So it's a one-dimensional thing. But when you combine different sounds, that changes the way it moves back and forth over time. Because sometimes it'll move forward more and sometimes move backwards more, depending on how the different sounds combine. And your brain kind of decodes those into understanding them as different sounds. But at any given point, it's only a single sound. Yeah. Super cool. It's crazy. So like, yeah.
Which is also why if you can encode it, if you go way back in time, you're like looking at records. You ever think about how cool records are? It's like this technology we've had for like 100 years. Like how do we encode records before we had computers, before anything like that? As if you speak into a microphone, and the microphone has the opposite of a speaker in it. The air that your mouth is moving back and forth pushes something inside the microphone back and forth, which when you're making a record pushes an indentation in the record up and down, and then you just run it around the needle, and it pushes the needle up and down when you want to play it back, and then that goes into a speaker and pushes the speaker in and out, and you get the sound again. Yeah, it's so cool. So you can go the other way too. If you're speaking something back and forth, encoded in up and down, comes out again as back and forth.
If you're recording on tape, is it actually imprinting in the tape?
In the
like audio tape.
In an audio tapes I think digital. I think they use a magnetic encoding. So it's like, can you get analog tapes? You might be able to get analog tapes. I'm not sure.
I think
you can.
I don't know.
But in either case, I'm pretty sure this is outside of my field now. I'm pretty sure tapes are magnetic. So even an analog tape would have like different degrees of how magnetized that little strip is, and then something reads how magnetized it is, and then that sets off like an electro, or it'd be the opposite to an electromagnet, it'd be like a magnet electro, something that converts it to electric impulses, which then runs a speaker. But it's the same sort of thing. Yeah, I think you can get analog tapes which have different levels of magnetization. But yeah, it's like instead of being up and down or in and out, it's encoded as magnetized, not magnetized. And then the amount of magnetization is how far in or how far out the speaker goes, which is how loud it is. How far in or how far out it goes is loudness. How fast it goes in and out is how quickly you change from being go in, go out in the tape. Yeah. That's all I got to say about sound. Any questions from the audience?
I have one.
Reuben.
Where am I?
You're in the past.
What?
Welcome to 2019.
Okay. Hey guys, it's Reuben.
It's grown up. Wait, that's the future.
Whatever. Hey guys, my name's Reuben.
This is Trampoline Skate.
And this is Trampoline Skateboarding. I do the history segment for this podcast.
So Reuben's going to tell us about Gandhi crossing the Alps.
Yeah. His name's actually Andy. We put the G on it to make it sound more foreign. It's called Andrew. Andrew sounds less mystical.
Gandrew.
No, well, I was going to say, I was looking at stuff about the Assyrian Empire before, but couldn't find anything super concrete that I feel
Reuben's got an assignment due tomorrow night on the Assyrian Empire.
No, it's not. No. That's not on the Assyrian. No, the assignment due tomorrow night is on New Zealand politics.
What are you reading? You said I'm going to look up what I'm doing for my assignment,
No,
and then
I
you
was
were reading
gonna
about
look
the Assyrian
I
Empire.
was going to look up what I was doing for this.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I
But
thought you were looking up your assignment. I'm sorry.
No. But anyway, don't feel confident enough speaking about the history of the Assyrian Empire. So I'm just gonna, if it's alright with you, I'm just gonna tell you my experience of the Assyrian New Year festival in
Oh, yeah, cool.
the other day.
So tell us about why Fairfield?
Why Fairfield?
It's
Well,
a shitty suburb here in Sydney where my grandparents live.
yeah, as it happens, Fairfield is like a global hub for the Assyrian diaspora, and Assyrian people are ethnic group. Kind of come from Iraq and like southeast Turkey. They don't have a nation state, so pretty much everyone who's Assyrian is a refugee or is a nomad. Please don't quote me on this. I'm so sorry.
Like an immigrant living in a different country.
Yeah.
Or just lives in a different country and is partially, some of their identity is Assyrian.
Yeah, exactly.
Like also Australian, but also Assyrian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But so anyway, I was at the Assyrian New Year Festival in Fairfield. It was nice. There was a lot of good food. And there were these Okay, so the first thing was, this has nothing to do with Assyrian people. This is just like weird things about, like, I guess, like, because it was kind of like a village fete or something, you know?
Yeah.
Very family. But there were all these rides, but there was no one on the ride. So there's all these like carnival people, like just like standing near the rides, like, and you'd be like, can I go on that one? And they'd be like, it's $8. And then you'd look at it, and it looked like it was almost like there was this, like, you know, the rotating saucer cup one.
Yeah,
It looked like it was almost
no one
gonna,
was
like,
on them.
yeah, they're gonna like rust off, like, and this guy's just like standing at the front, like having a heart, like, yeah, good life. But anyway, sorry.
$50 for a ride.
$50 for a ride, mate.
So it wasn't 2000 BC feet.
It wasn't 2000 BC. No, I wish it had been. But anyway, and then you know, there was this. We were just kind of hanging out, sitting near the stage. There was like a stage under this shelter, and then there was this big procession that came in, and there were all these like community leaders and public figures and politicians from the Assyrian community, and then there was Gladys Berejiklian, Fred Nile, the federal member for Fairfield, whose name is a Labor member. It's like Chris.
Hemsworth.
No.
McDonald.
Why can't I remember this? Anyway, Labor member and the New South Wales Chief of Police, and they're all sitting together at this big table. And
They weren't sitting the Assyrian people. They just got together all by themselves, the politicians and chiefs.
They were sitting like next to like the Assyrian community leaders at this big table, and like yeah, like it was just heaps weird. And then Gladys Berejiklian came and did a speech, and then the Labor guy came and did a speech, and he said, now this is a day for celebrating the Assyrian people, and it's not a day for political speeches. But this is word for word. Not a day for political speeches, but Labor has pledged a $350,000 check to the city of Fairfield for a new Assyrian culture centre if we are elected in the coming federal election. And anyway, it's crazy.
I love that he said, I'm not going to do a political speech, but here's a political speech.
Well, yeah, and also like here's a like a bribe.
It's like an ad, yeah. It's a bribe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, vote for us.
Yeah. Labor promises to establish the Assyrian Empire again on modern-day Iraq and Turkey.
Well, okay, so...
Is it Turkey? It's Iraq, Saudi Arabia, somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, Iraq.
Iran, maybe? No, that's Persia. That's old school Persia.
Yeah, it's like
I don't know anything about Assyria.
Turkey. Yeah, neither do I. But no, but also like a lot of these politicians like Gladys and the Labor guy and everyone else who did a speech were like very like, I guess, working hard. No, but they were very like, you know, the Assyrian people don't have a home today, but like one day, like you'll be able to go back and reclaim your homeland, and like you'll have like a state there, and
that's heavy.
You'll feel safe, and like, yeah, because I just like in theory that's a really nice thing to say, right? Like, I don't know, you feel displaced, and like one day you won't feel displaced, but it's like similar to like Israel vibes. Like,
yeah, it's like everyone wants a state in the Middle East because that's been an established place where cities have been for 7,000 years.
Yeah, and
so like everyone, they could have lived in the exact same place. You could have 7 different distinct cultures living in the exact same place for 1,000 years each. That's like 5 times older than the Western, like modern Western world.
And that's literally like Israel, like that's what that is.
It's like, well, this other culture's been there for 1,000 years now since the Islamic takeover.
Yeah.
It's like, it's also their home.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't all have it.
Well, yeah, and so I don't know. I found that kind of well, it's just like, okay, how are you going to go about peacefully allocating a physical nation for like Totally get it. That would be shit to not have a country. But like,
The country's Australian if they're living in Fairfield.
well,
They're Australian Assyrians. Good for them.
yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, it was
Yeah, that bugs me more and more the more I think about it. The politicians should have said, like, you're Australian and Assyrian, and that's great, and we welcome all sorts of different cultures, and we're all sort of doing our different things in Australia, this multicultural country. You don't have to have, like, another place as well.
Yeah.
You got your community here. We're here.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're doing the culture things here.
And I think, well, yeah, you could say that, but I think there's like still a lot of Assyrian people like who might argue. Like, I think a lot of Assyrian people would like we want an area where we have like sovereignty over and like.
Yeah, sovereignty. Vote in a different person if you don't like what the Labour dude said.
Yeah, but I mean like, but it's still like, it's not like an Assyrian person. It's not like an Assyrian culture runs Australia. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get you.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, I think that's what people feel iffy about. I'm not really sure whether that's a reasonable thing to feel iffy
No,
about.
I understand. Yeah, I get that. You want to. How should we deal with separatist movements?
Yeah, I don't know.
Good question. I have no idea how to deal with separatists.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got a good point.
And it's obviously like a sensitive topic, but you know, maybe you are right in like, you like 7 different ethnicities like lived on that land, and like, I don't know, man. Anyway, getting heavy here.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the solutions. We've just got the problems
Yeah.
on this podcast.
Yeah. And then there was this really good band.
Oh, that's good. Were they Assyrian?
I think they were Assyrian. They were playing like, it was like Assyrian music and like, it almost sounded like Cuban or like African. Or something.
Oh no, that's racist. It was totally Assyrian. 100% Assyrian music.
Yeah, maybe.
None of this Cuban shit.
None of this Cuban shit. And then they pulled out cigars and like.
What does Assyrian music sound like? No one's lived. The empire collapsed what, 2,500 years ago.
No, but see, this is the thing. The culture has continued.
That's good. That's nice. That's nice for them.
Wait, I'll try and.
So, would it be the same music that they've played? Have they made no progress in 2,500 years of music? That's a rude way of putting it. It's like we've preserved our culture for 2,500 years.
I reckon it's
Yeah,
like.
you haven't improved. That's what.
Yeah, I don't know. Like.
Sing the song that the band played.
Oh, I can't remember it. No, this will. Okay, maybe it won't play. Anyway, no, it was good.
Wait, they smoke cigars afterwards.
No, I was just saying that in reference to the Cuban thing.
Oh, like Cuban cigar.
Yeah.
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 It was a funny on-topic joke there.
It was good. Yeah, but basically that was.
That was really rude. I'm sorry. I shouldn't insult you. Oh, this is a mystery object for this week.
Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much all I got to say on Assyria.
Yeah, no, it sounded very nice.
So, yeah.
I bet they get really sick of people confusing them with Syria.
Yeah. Which is.
Yeah.
But no, Assyria, different thing.
Different thing. Was it in the same place? Syria is also in like that rough part of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, I just.
Yeah. So many different cultures and countries.
Yeah, buddy, we're all together. So many cultures. Right, we want to talk about propaganda?
Oh, yeah, propaganda. I'll tell a little story about the propaganda, and then I'm going to go get another beer, maybe a beer for Reuben if you want some.
Yeah.
While we have a think about what we're going to say about propaganda. My story to start us off on propaganda. We're going to be talking about the future of propaganda, but the present of propaganda is, unions sending emails to workers. So my mum was working at the tax office, and she's like in the union, and she was the one sending these propaganda emails out. So she sort of did a thing to all the people that were on the union email list, being like, hey, we're doing this thing on Monday or whatever. I don't know what it was, like just some stupid exercise thing or something, I don't know, a meeting. It wasn't like a big protest or anything. She got this email back from someone who was like up apparently like levels above in the hierarchical tax office of this office in Penrith. It was like they were one of the higher ups, and they sent an email back which said, I did not subscribe to seeing this union proper, PROPER space gander, GANDER.
Wow.
Leave me alone.
Propaganda.
I have a propaganda at this, or it was not right. Which is that might not work over this so much, but that's propaganda. Ruben's going to tell us about propaganda, and I'm going to go pee and get a drink. Do you want another beer, Ruben?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right. So now that Hunter's away, it's just me and you, the listener. So I suppose listen out, or do what you will. I'm just gonna let my train of thought kind of go onwards. Just talk about whatever I want. Could be this, could be that. Could be tit, could be tat. I don't know. I just vibe and I jive and I spit fire when I rhyme, 'cause most of the time I'm feeling sublime. I'm feeling like I ain't worth a nickel but a dime. I'm feeling like I'm spinning on a dime in my prime time. That's where I got the word from. Your mum. That's where I got that turd from. Your mum. I pulled it out of her asshole in one spherical piece. That's right, she shits balls. What are you gonna do? Tell your niece? I am not someone who knows much about art, but I can tell you that when your mum did that shart, she sharted out this perfect ball. It was made of brown sticky feces that was stuck to her gown. When she pulled the gown out, it was all covered in brown. That's because the gown was made of poo. And, well, there's the sound of a car. Away it goes, into the distance, you and me. We will fly into mediocrity, spreading out against the sea. I have 2 birds in my car named Parakeet. One's called Para, and one is called Keet. My friend's name was Boren. He was pretty boring. When we have chats, I let him know that he's snoring, and yet he is awake, and so how can he snore? This is the thing. Boren is a bore, because he can't talk. He just has the sleep asphyxiation thing, but he has it when he's awake. This means that he's always snoring when he is awake. If we put 2 juniper berries together, we will make some gin. There's not much gin without much sin. Floop, 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 floop. Floopy, floopy, floop. Put it in the soup with my mom flute. Do you have anything to say to me? Well, that's good. I'm well. My mother is good. Yep. No, we've got a house together. No, it's good. There's not much for me to say. We're getting a dog soon, which is cool. Its name is going to be Rex, we think. But I'm not sure she's not so keen on it. This isn't my mum, by the way. This is an imaginary girlfriend. It's probably going to be Rex. Here he is. Thank God. Saved it for myself.
Really?
Oh, this is dual cups. This is luxury.
Oh, luxury.
Yeah, luxury. Oh, thank you. This is very fancy.
Aye, we've been drinking from... Oh. Cheers!
To slavery.
Right, alright, we're going to be Scottish for the rest of this podcast.
Hey, I can handle that.
Alright, we got a message from our sponsors before we go back into it. I'm going to read it out. Right, Feeding Pills. Tonight's podcast is sponsored by Feelin' Pills. Feelin' Pills can help you experience any of 6 different emotions at the drop of a hat.
You said feelin' pills?
Feelin' Pills. Just choose what you want to feel. Pop a pill and have that feeling intensely for the next 30 minutes. Guaranteed. Feel happy, sad, angry, scared, embarrassed, or horny with Feelin' Pills. And now back to the podcast.
Whoa, where did you go?
I was right here this whole time. Oh, I better stop. If we have any listeners in Scotland, they're going to be so upset with me.
Oh, it'll be fine.
They probably wouldn't even be able to tell that I was meant to be. Hello, Jackson.
Are you guys doing a radio show?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Stucco Radio.
Are you live right now?
No.
We are live right now.
We're alive. Hey.
Oh my
What,
Come
you guys
join in.
God. I'm doing Rex on the tour about solar systems.
Oh, you're the solar guy from the Stucco meeting.
Yep. Why are we doing?
Come join our podcast. We're talking about the propaganda.
What propaganda?
We're having a propaganda at this subject.
You should tell them. You should tell them the
Did you
union.
need potatoes?
You should
I already
tell
told
them
the union
union
story.
Oh, but you should tell them again.
Well, it's a long,
That's
boring
Fresh
story.
ears, though. Someone emailed his mom about an email she sent and said, I don't want this propaganda, but it was spelled P-O-R-T-E-E space G-A-N-D-E-R. That's what I feel for. Anyway,
Well, yeah.
He was a dumb code. Alright,
Yeah.
shalom.
Alright.
Yeah, they won't be generating much power at the moment, though. I'm sorry. Because it's night time.
Anyway.
Oh yeah, we're talking about propaganda. What were you talking about while I was gone, Reuben?
Oh,
You're going to
no.
tell me everything you
No.
told me. This is going to be a slow, bloody podcast.
I think it's
I'm going to upload it without cutting anything out.
Okay.
Because I can't be bothered listening to. Who would want to listen to this? Jesus.
Friars?
Friars.
Like Friar Tuck?
Friars is in people that go like hee, or friars is in people that like.
Friar.
Oh, it's a
A
crier.
friar, I think, is a monk in training.
Oh,
Maybe?
that was like someone that cooks chips.
Well, it's that too. That's different spelling.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah, propaganda. Yeah. So Reuben,
Yes.
you live in the age of the internet,
I do.
and as such, you're aware of this newfangled invention called social media.
I am.
Having been an expert on the human condition, could you tell us about how today's social media is used to propagandize people?
Wait. You mean like how today's social media is used to like politically influence people?
Politically, advertising, all that sort of thing, and then we'll use that as a springboard to predict where it might go in the future.
Well, I guess, I'm no expert, but I guess, what you hear is that, propaganda and advertising can be a lot more effective these days because people are directly interacting with most of the media they absorb. So rather than just turning on rather than, someone collecting data about advertising, rather than the only data being that, I know people are watching certain channels at certain times and, your business is going up because you put out a good ad, right? Which is the two forms of data you could have collected. Now you have a much more three-dimensional picture of everyone's interaction with the product because they're making a lot. Because if you're experiencing it online or on Facebook, you're making a lot more immediate choices about what you're watching and you're controlling the content.
Yeah, right. So you're saying not just because they know more about you, but because you can instantly get more information. Like if it's some news story, right? They might historically just be able to say, here's the news update, and then be done. But with this, we can trigger you with a sentence of whatever word is going to make you most angry or most likely to click this link.
Yeah.
And then you click it, and then you'll just get into a hole where you learn more and more and more about this thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the end result. But I think what I'm saying more is that is allowed to happen because research is more effective now. Because market research is because researching into your demographic isn't as abstract anymore. You're not just throwing out ads out there and seeing if people see them on a billboard or seeing if TV ratings go up. You can throw ads
you can
out
find out
and
instantly.
it'll be there were likes just then, and
Yeah,
these people
yeah.
in these countries, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's even deeper, more insidious than that.
Yeah.
Because that's the sort of paid advertising we see on social media, which is pretty influential. But I'm particularly worried about when we don't know that we're being advertised to. I know we're a little bit not topical, it's a little bit late, but I was reading about the alleged Russian election interference in America. And I know they did have things to try and target Americans for that election. The only question is whether Trump was involved, which we're not going to talk about. But the things they were doing were really kind of sneaky and clever. It was
Is it memes? Were they
memes. They were funny memes. Yeah. And it wasn't just they were trying to. Basically, their goal was to separate this. The Russians, so it's a foreign state. They're trying to separate into different groups, this divide people. So they were running communities which were gay pride and white pride and black pride and different Facebook communities which each had a ton of members. And they'd use all the tricks to grow that to start with, and then people would sort of share them and join them organically. Communist pride and capitalist pride and liberals are idiots and conservatives are idiots. They would run all these different pages and deliberately try to push them to the extremes, to make them sort of divided. Yeah. And then when they had a large group of people sort of following them, and it had some sort of message, suppose, I don't know if this was their actual goal, but suppose they had a candidate they wanted people not to vote for. Then in say the story I heard was they were using black pride pages to get people to not vote in the election by pointing out all the things that Clinton doesn't stand up for black people, so let's not vote. Or they use white pride pages to get the same result, but using a different message to get there. If you pace and lead people, you say something so extreme that they're if this person's saying it, then it's definitely for that goal because that's all I've sort of heard from them. So they're deliberately encouraging political extremism, which is kind of good news. It might be the case that a lot of the extreme differences in views and a lot of the straw manning aren't actually real people. They might just be different countries and companies trying to make everyone else look extreme by posting extreme things themselves.
That's so weird.
So I worry a bit about that.
Yeah, that is really fun.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking the other day when you could see only true news stories, so being skeptical won't help so much.
You can see only true stories.
Only true news stories come up in your feed, and each news story, you're a super skeptical person, Reuben, and you go and you research it and you find out, is this news story true? And all of them are. But that takes a while. It takes a little while to see a news story. It takes maybe 10 minutes if you're not skeptical, an hour if you are skeptical of the news story. And because the world is so big, I could just show you whatever true news I wanted you to think. Suppose I wanted you to think that there were a lot of, say, racially motivated attacks on whatever race you're from or something. I show you true news stories about that happening every time one happens, which is pretty often because there's a lot of people in the world. Show you a news story about it, and you're like, fuck, this is happening all the time. And then suppose I want someone else to think all those news stories are hoaxes. So I only show them news stories where someone has actually done a hoax. And the hoaxes happen fairly often too. I don't know how often, but enough that you could show someone an article of a new hoax every month or two, every week or two. Well, it's a big place. You can find a lot of true news stories of hoaxes. And then they'll think every news story about this attack is a hoax. So then you have two people whose information is totally true, whose beliefs has been pushed to the complete opposite. And they think the other one is a complete idiot for thinking that any of these news stories are hoaxes, or for thinking that all of these news stories are true, or that none of them are hoaxes. And then you'll get so angry at each other. And then you'll point to your own evidence, which is true. That really scares me.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And I mean, it also, what that also highlights is that there's not enough concrete information in the world to really develop a good, like, you know, people who like have religious promises, like, I don't know, like racially motivated attacks. To take that further.
Yeah.
Someone could be like, racially motivated attacks are really prevalent, and it's like, yeah, true. And then they could say racially motivated attack hoaxes are really prevalent, and yeah, that is true as well. And oh no, sorry, I'm just repeating you. No, my point was that no one really has the info on what really is the most pressing issue. And so whenever someone has a policy on something that they say like, yeah, this is the most pressing issue, it throws into doubt whether they really know that. It's like,
yeah, even a politician is a victim to this sort of thing as well.
Yeah, and when they're promising things because they're like, I don't know, homelessness is the biggest thing in the state.
Yeah.
How do you know? I don't know, how do they know that?
Yeah, I don't know how they know that. And then everyone that votes for them is like an even further step away. How do they know the politician is right about that thing? Like I was voting the other day for our state elections here, and I was chatting to the campaigner dude, and they were like, she was like chatting about all those different things that this person would do, and I was like, I have no idea if these policies are good or not. I don't know about these 15 different issues that I'm being sort of slammed with on the way to the poll. I'm not qualified to elect a government. I'm just sort of hoping that the average across all people kind of is like the people that know what they're saying about each issue get above the noise in each case, you know? Yeah. Which is like my hope for democracy, but I definitely didn't feel confident picking someone to lead this state.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been to uni, right?
Yeah, no.
So the majority of people haven't been to uni. Like, I mean, you're in a minority. You know, like your education a minority.
I'm in a very lucky sort of high awareness of things, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
Although I didn't study anything political, I studied science.
Yeah, true. But like, I just feel like most of the country didn't go to uni, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very easy to sort of straw man. Do you sort of feel like there's a sort of, it seems to be a common view that anyone that disagrees with me is an idiot. Like, because people kind of hang out with their mates, and their mates usually have very similar opinions to them.
Yeah.
Or they only see when they're like, say like the other side of politics does something kind of stupid.
Yeah.
What you see of that is really just people on your side criticizing that. So you don't actually really know what the other side did so much. You sort of know how it's been sort of strawmanned and filtered by the time it gets to you. And because there's people that agree with you, you're kind of inclined to agree with it. I'm victim to this as well, which is like, everyone is. So then you kind of get the idea that, everyone that has this view or voted for this person is dumb. Or like the person themselves is dumb. Like, yeah, so I was thinking about that. Because I don't think that Trump is a very good leader, but a lot of people think that he is an idiot. And I'm sort of like, I mean, he might be, but he did manage to get elected to like the highest office
In the world.
Like, that's a pretty big achievement, you know? You can't be an idiot and just stumble into that.